Dwight Moody was one of the greatest evangelists of the Gilded Age. He traveled abroad preaching salvation through Jesus Christ. While he was successful winning souls for the Lord, he also founded several schools during an era of corruption. Moody's success in revivalism can be traced to his attack on the urban centers of the United States at a time when the multitudes of people were migrating to the United States in search of better lives. Yet Moody was not an eloquent speaker and lacked an education, but he pushed for education and continued his ministry. Dwight Moody's influence on religion and education during the Gilded Age set the stage for the modern mass revivalism in the United States. D.L. Moody was born in Northfield, Massachusetts on February 5, 1837, to Edwin and Betsy Moody. Moody's upbringing was difficult since he was one of 9 children raised by his widowed mother because his father passed away when he was 4. He lacked a formal education and dreamed of a more adventurous life than the farm afforded. Moody ventured to Boston to work in a shoe store at the age of 17. It was here that Moody gave his life to the Lord and began his ministry. Moody would lead a Sunday school class for the YMCA in Chicago, and he would also be praised for this missionary work with the organization. While Moody's social work in the late 1850s and 1860s with the YMCA in Chicago strengthened his career, it is his turn toward evangelism that made him famous worldwide. What set Moody apart from others of his time was the belief that music could persuade a soul to Jesus. Moody believed that music would be a valuable tool in his evangelistic campaigns, so when, in 1870, he heard Ira Sankey sing at a YMCA convention, he convinced Sankey to give up a well-paying government career to join him on the Sawdust Trail. Although Moody was very effective at being an evangelist preacher, it would be the combination of his preaching and Sankey's music that would bring a lot of souls to Christ. Deeply effective are Sankey's solos, not only in touching the heart's affections, but in deepening the expressions made by the word. The solo, Too Late, following on Mr. Moody's address on the despair of the lost in hell, had the most solemn effect. The wail, "Oh, let us in, oh, let us in," and the awful response, too late, you cannot enter now," are enough to wring the inmost soul of every wavering and undecided sinner. Aside from his music ministry, there were other ways that Moody changed evangelism. Moody, unlike his counterparts, believed in interdenominational work. Addressing the lay participation, social reform, and the time period all affected Moody's influence on religion, as well as the media of the day. In these ways, Dwight Moody appealed to a wide variety of people. Moody's training stemmed from his work with the Young Men's Christian Association, whose work, markedly expanded during the Civil War, existed to combine Christians of different traditions for special forms of mission. Moody's work with the YMCA can be further seen in James L. Findley Jr.'s excerpt. The most important of these was the annual YMCA College Conference, begun in 1886. The student volunteer movement, which sought recruits for missionary work, originated at the first of these conferences. Moody's success in religion is derived from his ability to include lay people. Moody attracts the common man because his sermons are simple. Moody himself only received a 5th grade education, yet he is able to call many men to Christ. In his sermon, Jesus Fulfilling Prophecy, Moody exclaims, "But the moment you begin to preach Christ and tell the world that he has power on earth to forgive sins, why then the people begin to gather him. And where is there a name to be compared with that of Jesus? See how his kingdom is being extended and how the heralds of the cross are going over deserts and mountains and over this dark earth to proclaim his name to a perishing world."
And found in him wonderful courage. For 120 years that the ark was building, he labored to get men to believe in God's righteousness. He did not get one. And I said, "What have I to be discouraged about after that?"
While Moody did in fact reach the masses of poor and uneducated in the United States, he also amassed great support from magnates within the United States. Historian Edward Blum dictates between 1875 and 1877 there is little doubt that Moody reigned supreme as the most popular religious figure in the nation. Often preaching 3 times a day, Moody addressed millions of Northerners in Brooklyn, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, and Boston. In these massive audiences sat President Ulysses S. Grant, railroad mogul Tom Scott, poet John Greenleaf Whittier, historian and statesman George Bancroft, and oil magnate John D. Rockefeller. Some notables even lent the evangelist a hand. International banker J.P. Morgan presided as treasurer of Revival Finances, while New York's merchant prince William E. Dodge filled the campaign coffers. Not only was Dwight Moody famed for his ministry, but also as a founder of Northfield Seminary for Girls in 1879, Mount Hermon School for Boys in 1881, and the Bible Institute in 1886, making him quite the advocate for education in America during the Gilded Age. While the establishment of all 3 schools proves Moody's concern with educating America's youth, they were very different in their goals. According to Donald Wells, the Northfield schools developed as secondary schools, preparing students both for immediate service and for college careers, which would hopefully lead to service later. A broad liberal arts educational experience was provided. The Bible Institute operated on a post-high school level and was geared exclusively to provide training for those preparing for immediate Christian service. In his article, Bruce Evanson says that the Reverend Joseph Cook, writing the foreword to the Globe's volume, considered it central to the success of Moody's mission. Many of the 6,000 to 7,000 who had nightly filled the Boston Tabernacle were drawn, he felt certain, by news stories of the spectacles they would find there. The work of sending religious truths abroad through the newspaper's press, Cook commented, surpassed Whitefield's witness of 1740 during the Great Awakening and reflected the proper power of publicity in modern ministry. Throughout his entire life, Moody exclaims that he is not a great man nor an eloquent speaker, but the newspapers report to his great success. The headlines of a New York Times article reads, "Dwight L. Moody returns. He comes back to hold a week of revival at the Grand Central Palace. 16,000 hear him." In order for 16,000 people to come hear someone preach, that preacher must be doing something to attract such a crowd. Additionally, the Chicago Daily Tribune covered the story about Moody's plans on selecting the site for the training school for the missionaries. In this article, Moody is quoted as saying, "It will be an evangelization society to train and instruct young women in missionary work with the view of reaching the non-church-going classes. All the money, $250,000, has been raised, and our plans will be matured at once. I spent the morning looking around for a site on which to locate it. We think of locating it on the west side on account of the greater population." Even in death, Dwight Moody is published in the papers. His longtime friend, Reverend F.B. Mayer, wrote a tribute to Moody after his death. At the top of it, it's a quote by Moody. "By and by you will hear people say, 'Moody is dead. Don't you believe a word of it?' At the very moment I shall be more alive than I am now. I shall then truly begin to live. I was born of the flesh in 1837. That which is born of the flesh may die. That which is born of the Spirit will live forever." Then Mayer goes on to say, "These striking words with which Mr. Moody closed a sermon at Northfield long ago will be recalled by the thousands who heard them, and the much larger number who read them, as they are repeated again through the world."